Welcome to another episode of The Horrific Podcast. We're two musicians who used to play in a band together and share a passion for scary movies. Each week we pick a different horror movie and dissect it to figure out what it was trying to accomplish, how well it did, and maybe even some larger truths about why people watch horror movies in the first place. If you haven't seen the movie we're talking about, then don't worry. The first half of the episode will be pretty high level and spoiler free, and then we'll play a warning before we start talking about any major plot twists in the ending. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoy the episode. So you hadn't seen Invasion of the Body Snatchers, had you?
Nope. This is the first time that I watched it.
Nice. This was one that I remember my Uncle Norman talking about a lot when I was a kid, and he was a big sci-fi fan, and it's interesting because I think the border between sci-fi and horror is kind of a small one. I feel like there tends to be a lot of overlap between them, and this is a movie that I've seen a lot over the years, and It was interesting coming back to it because it's been several years since I watched it last, but it was interesting coming back to it and kind of looking at it from a more analytical perspective. So I'll be very curious to see what your take was.
Yeah, I was really surprised that this wasn't one that I had watched before.
Yeah.
But being the whole classic kind of title that comes along with that movie, but yeah.
Well, cool. I'll introduce it and then we can get started. In 1956, Allied Artists Pictures released the sci-fi horror sensation Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was a film adaptation of the book The Body Snatchers by Jack Finney. The movie follows a small town called Santa Mira where many residents are reported as acting strange even though they look and sound the same as ever. A doctor named Miles and his former/new squeeze Becky start investigating and find themselves in the midst of something much more elaborate and dangerous than anyone had guessed. Invasion of the Body Snatchers was made on a budget of just over $400,000 and made about $3 million at the box office. In 1994, it was inducted into the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. So, what did you learn about this movie?
Learned a few things about this movie. So this movie is based off a magazine serial, not the breakfast cereal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? So anyway, in December 1954, a magazine ran 3-part series that would come out. And it was called The Year's Most Original Story of Suspense, written by Jack Finney. It was basically based off of that kind of 3-part series, which we've had, I was trying to remember the other movie that we did that was related, or based off of a little magazine short, and I couldn't remember which one specifically, but it was a classic. Anyway, kind of common. So, one thing about this movie and reading, looking up facts and stuff, is there's kind of a debate on how long it took to finish filming.
Oh, really?
I've read 24 days, I've read 23 days, I've read 19 days. In fact, literally, different websites show, and say in confidence, this movie was finished in 19 days and on this budget. And, anyway, so this movie was filmed within 19 to 24 days, depending on the source.
Yeah. I
don't know why it matters, why they don't have an exact date, but maybe they thought it'd be more impressive if it was filmed quicker. But anyway, so the leading man suggested the title change. I won't really get too far into the story, but basically it says here, in the film, alien pods replace slumbering people with emotionless duplicates. That's kind of a spoiler. This movie came out in the 50s, get over it. And, so when Kevin McCarthy landed the lead role of Dr. Miles, he suggested Invasion of the Body Snatchers should be renamed to Sleep No More, I guess. He didn't think that Invasions of the Body Snatchers worked. He liked Sleep No More. But anyways, it's a whole story I don't want to get into.
What an idiot.
I know, he was way off.
History has proved that man wrong.
He was, what was he trying to be, an emo band from the early 2000s?
Yeah, right.
Anyway. Alright, so this movie ranked number 9 on the American Film Institute's list of 10 greatest films in the genre of sci-fi. It was ranked in 2008, so that could have changed within the past 11 years. Kevin McCarthy would also later reprise his role as the Doctor in the remake of Invasions of the Body Snatchers, which came out in 1978.
Oh, interesting. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he also portrayed it in Looney Tunes Back in Action 2003. I saw that on multiple sources. I don't know why that's a thing, but it's a thing. Okay, so another thing is the tone of this movie was originally supposed to be like have a lot of humor in it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't think it was supposed to be a comedy. It was just supposed to have a lot of humor. There was kind of mixed emotions, basically, based off of like the early screenings of the film. Like they were kind of confused on why they were laughing at specific parts, and like even though there was a laugh there, it still had like a serious tone, you know. And you know, there's a lot of like theories, I guess, about like what this story really means. You know what I mean? Like, I guess they're, you know, kind of a Cold War kind of thing.
We will totally get into that.
Yeah. So, they ended up kind of wiping out the humor and made it a little serious. And I don't know if it was because of the underlining story, but anyway. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. But that is all I got.
Nice. So, originally, it was more kind of like what Slither ended up being?
Probably.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's really interesting.
Probably. Yeah. I wish that there was like an original version that came out. I mean, because they screened it. So that'd be kind of cool to see if the humor was there. But
yeah.
I also read where they were talking about they were worried about basically the nudity of like the once you some bodies that you know come out of, anyway, they were worried about the nudity of it, and it was just like there's none nudity in this film.
and
you were worried about that?
Trust us, if anyone could find nudity in a movie, it would be you.
It is me. I'm looking for nips left and right the whole film,
frame by frame.
It doesn't matter the movie. I'm on it. But anyway, so it was like, I just thought it was kind of funny. I was like, God, there's like, it's funny how things have changed. But anyway.
Yeah. So we normally start off talking about like what were the people who made the movie trying to do and how well did they do it. And I assume you've seen lots of episodes of The Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah.
So this movie to me could have just been like an extra long episode of that.
Yeah,
I felt like
there's like a similar story to this.
Yeah, I mean, like it was in black and white. It had lots of shadows. It had mostly good acting. The music was very, very similar, like the styles and the way that it was used, and then just sort of that like feeling of uncertainty and mystery throughout, and then like a big reveal towards the end. Like it really was like a Twilight Zone episode, and I love the Twilight Zone, so I also like that about this movie.
Right.
But kind of going back,
this came out before the Twilight Zone too, so I wonder if this was one of the influences for it.
I think it had to have been. And I would be curious to see if there were people involved in both, or if it was just like because it was similar. But going back to something you mentioned earlier about how it was shot in a pretty short period of time, there wasn't a lot of dressing on this one. You know what I mean? Like it seemed very straightforward. It wasn't like a lot of visual effects. It wasn't a lot of costumes or anything. I mean, for the most part, it really was just kind of the actors on screen, and I thought that was really different than most of the movies that we've watched lately.
Yeah, it was like you were kind of figuring out things with the people in the movie as they go, without anything to really kind of go on.
Yeah,
you know, like you could believe part of the story that was going on, like maybe everyone's just kind of going crazy, or like maybe he's just going crazy. Like there's a lot of questions that kind of left up, and I think because of the lack of visual, like I don't know where I'm going. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it was like 40 minutes in before you had any definitive evidence on what was happening. I mean, it really did kind of string it along there. And I think that the movie, sort of by nature, was really all about the storytelling and just sort of the slow play of that uncertainty and that, should I feel scared or not? Are they in danger or are they not? Who is right? Who's wrong? Introducing the idea that people were all begging for the doctor, but then won't say what's wrong. But then he shows up to the town and everybody seems fine.
Right.
There's like that girl that comes in and says her friend is convinced that her Uncle Ira isn't actually her Uncle Ira somehow. But then that doesn't really turn into anything. There's the kid that says his mother isn't his mother and he was hiding in the cellar crying. Like, just all of these little things that seem off. Mm-hmm. But no like definitive evidence, so it's really building it up to be creepy. And I think that what you said about this being released sort of in 3 parts initially explains that feeling, because you're building that suspense, you're kind of building up to points where you want to stop and then leave the readers really wanting to find out what happens next. And so the movie, I thought, did a good job of that too. Like, it felt very well paced as far as it was constantly giving you new stuff to wonder about, sort of throughout. And so it didn't feel like a super long movie, even though there wasn't a whole lot happening for the first half of it.
Yeah, and it definitely helped it out too, because you're like, well, that you're watching a movie, so that something's going on, but you don't know who's the person that's acting weird. Is it the people claiming that the other people aren't who they say they are, or is it the people who aren't who they so it's just that it keeps it interesting, it's literally kind of like a mystery film.
Well, and I would think probably too, at the time when the movie was new and it wasn't just this like ingrained part of culture and you didn't know what the big reveal was, it was probably even more effective then.
Yeah,
because it was a pretty original idea, at least from what I can tell. And so, audiences wouldn't have gone into it expecting that that's what would happen, that it was this like sci-fi type explanation. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. One thing that stood out to me a lot too was just like, pay attention to the shadows in this movie, and then pay attention to the shadows in any modern movie. And it's crazy how different it is.
Oh, really? I don't think I noticed.
Like, if you just look, there are constantly like shadows on the walls or partially on people's faces. It's like everywhere through the whole movie, basically. Yeah. Whereas like now, you never see a shadow in a movie unless it's like deliberate to try and make it look spooky or something. So, and then there were a couple things that didn't age super well, like when they're in the doctor and Becky are in the car. And the outside is just like obviously fake, and they're obviously not driving. It's just like the film reel in the background or whatever. Yeah, that was pretty funny.
I mean, like that doesn't age well now, but like up until the 90s, that's how it would have. Watching an episode of Seinfeld where they're driving, it's like that's the exact same.
Yeah,
kind of. Yeah,
but
great.
But beyond that, I mean, really, the special effects or the creatures, I guess, were really the only thing sort of out of the ordinary of just people walking around wearing normal clothes. And I feel like they went with a very minimal approach, but that kind of worked because I don't know that they could have pulled off anything more elaborate.
I mean, without it being like Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Right, like that level of kind of campy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think as far as other movies that we've watched, the ones that this one reminded me the most of were Psycho and Night of the Living Dead. And it's kind of like with Psycho, it's a lot more about kind of that mood and that the build up and the mystery, and this one worked on a very similar level.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I could see that for sure.
So all that said, and we may have kind of answered this already, but who do you think would like this movie, or who would you recommend it to?
So this is another one of those horror that anyone, I mean, like it's not like it's super scary, scary, I guess I would say, or like threatening. So like it's a classic horror movie. So this is the same kind of, Dracula, Frankenstein, like people who are fans of those old movies, like absolutely. If you're a fan of it, you probably have watched it though. Granted, I haven't. So what's that to say?
You'd recommend it to yourself.
I would recommend it to myself. That's where I'm getting at. But it's also like the, it technically kind of technically sci-fi because of the story, but that being said, like, if you're not a fan of sci-fi, you'll still like this movie.
Yeah, I think really anybody that likes the Twilight Zone would love this movie. It's definitely not like hardcore horror. There's not gore, there's not a lot of violence. It's more creepy than anything. And so anyone that likes old movies and good storytelling, I think, would be on board with it. Even though it is sort of a sci-fi horror movie, it's not so far into those genres that it would alienate people that don't like the genre.
Yeah, exactly.
Do I get points for saying alienate?
You did. You get multiple points.
Excellent. Well, cool. Let's play the spoiler warning, and then I've got a question for you.
Warning, warning, warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. This is your warning. Warning, warning, warning. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. This is your warning. If it's not obvious enough, warning, spoilers.
Okay, so something that confused me a little bit, and just because I feel like it never got fully spelled out, but what exactly would happen when a person went to sleep? So the setup for that is when there were these alien spores that fell to Earth, they grew these pods in a farmer's field, and inside the pods, whatever like the closest human was, it would start growing basically a clone of them. And then once the clone reached a certain size or maturity, then the next time that person went to sleep, they would be replaced by the clone. But they say, like, they say in the movie, like, something to the effect, and this is like right before, so this is when Jack and the other psychiatrist found the doctor in his, like, when the doctor and Becky are hiding out in his office. They go into the room to get the pods ready, and they, like, right before that, they say something like, they kind of explain it, where it's like, they take on the physical form of you exactly the same. You get a cut on your hand, there's a cut on that hand, and then when you go to sleep, it takes over your consciousness and, like, basically kind of replaces you. I don't know what happens to the bodies of the people that it's like what physically happens to those bodies, but like I know that the new bodies takes over your consciousness and all that. If that was well, that was the piece. Is I feel like there's an extra body in like any way that I try and think about how that works. You always end up with an unexplained body. So I don't know what was supposed to be happening to the people that were getting replaced.
Granted, if the pods can produce, I'm sure they can.
Oh, maybe they like feed it back. Could be. But yeah, I was just imagining like all of those houses being full, like that whole town being full of just like corpses in the houses of the bodies that have been replaced, and
that's why we could never be in a movie like that, because we just have too many questions.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, so what happens now? What happens with the bodies afterward?
Yeah, but that's
you're looking too far into this.
Just enjoy the movie.
Do I still get to eat? I'm fat now. Can I be skinnier later? I'm in.
Oh, wow. I don't even remember what we were talking about.
Invasions of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, I thought this was a Slither episode.
No, man.
I take back everything I've said.
I was confused.
Yeah.
Did you watch, I guess there's a color version of this movie out. Did you watch that, or did you watch black and white?
No, I watched black and white.
I guess there's a color version now. Maybe there's not. I think there is, but I watched the black and white. I would pick black and white for these older movies over color.
Yeah.
Like the ones that were, digitally. Yeah. Ugh.
Well, and I think that, so they were making the movie under the assumption that it would be black and white. So right. I think a lot of the directorial decisions and stuff were in that world. And so adding color to it, I think, takes away from the art of it. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, so I didn't have a good explanation for like exactly the logistics of how it worked, but I think that the story was more about the idea of it, and I think that there were some larger themes that it was exploring that wasn't super relevant to. So,
well, see, and you've watched this before, so you know the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hadn't, and I didn't think of that. So I wonder, if if that played a part. Like I was more so trying to figure out what was going on than what was the crossing the T's and dotting the I's kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
That was a good question, though.
Yeah. So, I have one love and one hate for this movie.
Uh-oh.
I tried to keep it short because I feel like we've just spent a decent amount of time talking about stuff that we liked and didn't like. Yeah. But these are kind of the things that didn't really fit anywhere else. So, my love is that I liked that occasionally Miles narrated the story.
Yep.
One, because it was a good way of being able to show action and not just have the whole thing be dialogue driven the whole time. But it was also a good reminder that this is all a flashback. Because you know how, like...
And you do forget. Like,
yeah.
I forgot part way through the movie. Yeah.
And in a lot of movies, it'll, like, cut back to the person telling the story.
Yeah.
For a little bit. And then you have a scene that just completely breaks the flow and is awkward. And then it, like, cuts back to the flashback again. As a reminder, I really liked this better. I really preferred it this way because it just... You know how he ends up, and you're being reminded throughout the movie how he ended up, at the beginning where he's brought in and looks all crazy. And so you're trying to, like, figure out how you get from where you're at to that point when sometimes everything seems okay. So it just added a little bit of, like, urgency and mystery to it that wouldn't have been there otherwise, and I liked that.
Yeah. I think I would prefer, like you said, I prefer it this way. It did definitely help bring it back that it was a story. I think in a way it kind of didn't harm it, but like you knew at the beginning of the movie there was just the doctor, and then like the main part of this movie is that the doctor and Becky are running away, and it's like, oh, but she's not there, so I wonder, kind of thinking like, oh, okay, she's probably not going to make it, which you want. In the situation, you want them to make it. Yeah. So, yeah.
So my hate was how creepy Miles got when he took Becky home.
Yeah, it was kind of creepy.
And he's trying to, like, follow her upstairs, and he's like real into it. Like he's going for it. And then you realize she lives with her dad. What? That is a level of boldness that I will never approach about anything in life.
Yeah. He was trying hard. He was trying super hard. It was like she turned the light on, and he was like fixing to make his move, turn the light off. It was like, ooh. And then the dad came in, but because he's a doctor, it's like it's cool. Yeah, right. He was just like, oh, she's talking to a doctor. He
has a good job.
Yeah. I think for me, like, so I enjoyed like this movie. Like I was very into this movie more than what I initially thought. Like I didn't think I would be as intrigued by it. I don't know why, but
and you're generally not a fan of sci-fi, right?
Not
that's a thing fan. That's kind of a turn off for you.
Yeah, we never, I never really watched them growing up, and we had talked about that before. But I think what kind of got me was sometimes throughout the movie, and yet again fan of this movie, but sometimes through it was like the doctor just like figures it out. He just figures out what's going on without like too much of a tale. To like a tell of what's happening. I guess it's like he was setting, and like the narration kind of helped, but like when Jack and his wife come over and they're talking to the doctor, like it kind of hits him, and that's when he realizes that something's wrong with her, but it's still too early in the story to know what's going on with the pods, and so it was just like he just knew these kind of things. It was just like like maybe if we could have added something
like a little more to build up to his understanding.
And another part was like when they're running away, and eventually Becky succumbs. When Becky, the word, you're just telling me. I know that you know this. Anyway, Becky falls asleep. She becomes one of the freaks, and she's laying. They fall into like the puddle, and like it's all of a sudden he realizes that because she opens her eyes.
Yeah.
It was just like, man.
Yeah.
And then she's like starts talking like, it's really not that bad. Go to sleep.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So you think maybe there were some jumps, a little more than there needed to be in like his understanding of what was happening. Yeah.
And or like explain it for us dummies. You know.
Oh, so you're saying like he figured out more than the average viewer would be able to, given the same evidence.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
And that's one too, where like having seen the movie several times, it didn't stand out as much to me. But yeah.
But also, I do want to live in a place, like I wish I could live in a time where like doctors drink and smoke as much as they did.
Yeah.
Like it seems like a good time.
Make you feel less guilty.
Yeah. I mean, like, yeah, ever since I quit really drinking and smoking, my life's been miserable. I've got married, bought a house.
Yeah.
But back when I was drinking and smoking, I was in a band.
That's true.
One thing I think that kind of helped it though, one thing I kind of liked was because of there's like almost like an innocence to this movie.
Yeah.
You still have like the and so this is kind of getting into some of my favorite scenes, which I think was where we were going. But yes. There's like an innocence to this movie where they could get away with some things that wouldn't really make sense if it was a movie nowadays. So one scene, like, so the doctor and Becky are hiding out in his office.
Yeah. And
like by this time kind of figured out like you got to stay awake. There are pods out there. Like the whole scene where they're at the doctor's office is just brilliant. Like I love it. Mm-hmm. You know, they look outside, they see all the people slowly walk to like that little town center little area, and like they're handed out, you know, they're getting the pods and all that. So Jack and the psychiatrist come in and you know, they basically find the doctor and Becky, and they're hiding out, and they come in and they're kind of explaining what's going on, and they're like, we have the 2 pods here, do you want to see them, like, you know, basically become full size or whatever. It's magnificent to watch, whatever. And like they just walk away into the other room and leave the doctor and Becky by themselves, like in his office, where it's like, yeah, he's gonna figure out a way to get out of there.
Right.
But so the doctor's like, wait, I got a plan. And this movie's so innocent, it just works out. Yeah. Like, this is why I see it. But he's like, wait, I got a plan. And she's like, what is it? And like, he was going to grab a knife and no. And then he just goes over and locks the doors. It's like, okay, well, your plan can stop there. That worked. Like, you were good, man.
It worked.
Like, that worked. You locked them out. Like, you're done. But, I mean, he obviously continued on and made the potion that would put him to sleep or whatever, but it's just like, man, that's so great. Like, I laughed at that part because it was like they could have stopped there. I wish that they had just stopped there. Like, he was just like, oh wait, I think I figured it out, hold on, and he just walks to the door and locks it.
We've outsmarted them.
Oh, what do we do? But anyway, so that was my that was one of my favorite scenes. But I mean, that whole scene worked out. Like, I loved it. From seeing all the people walk to a little town, you know, to the center area, be handed pods. Yeah, they're kind of figure out what's going on. You know, Jack and the other psychiatrists come in and explain in depth, and then, you know, the whole action fight scene and you know, I think also, like, this movie is the reason why dogs die in every horror movie ever. Because, like, after they, you know, they pull one over on Jack and the psychiatrist, they're walking down the street and they're trying to act like the people who have been taken over, and then all of a sudden a dog runs in front of a vehicle, and Becky has to, like, scream about it, which is like, that's normal. That's gonna happen.
Yeah. that scene when they're in the doctor's office looking down on the town square, I thought was one of the best of the movie. I really liked it. Was almost like synchronized walking, but that was the first time that you saw really the full impact of what was happening.
Yeah.
And that they were all just like on a mission, you know, and like loading up those or seeing the trucks full of the pods and then like taking those back out. It just seemed like super organized, and there was the cop like, giving directions, and
almost like worker bees / like ants in a way, like they, you know, in a way kind of like Slither too, where it's almost like they're all kind of tied to some you know, something. I can't remember the exact word for it, but like they're all kind of tied together, thinking the same conscious way or something.
The hive mind.
Yeah.
Well, and just also to the way that it was like just methodically spreading, you know, like that added a whole additional element to it. Is it's not going to stay in this town. I mean, obviously they have big plans for getting outside of there, and so I just kind of the big wide shot of all that happening and everybody kind of marching in line and stuff was cool. And then another shot I really liked was it's from like inside the greenhouse when Miles walks in, and the camera is from the floor like looking up at him, and it's kind of at a side like weird angle, and then it switches back and you see the pod open and start bubbling and the face coming out of it, and that's the first time you really have any visibility at all into, you know, what's happening or the ability to see what they have alluded to is happening this whole time. And so I thought that was a pretty good reveal, even though it wasn't over the top, you know, with special effects or anything. Just the way that it was set up was cool.
Once you realize that it was like producing an exact clone of that person, it's like that's when it kind of gets creepy, because it's like there's nothing you can do about this, because even if they see that person, I don't know, it's just you know, even if they see that, you know, someone you know sees them, they're not gonna know any different. I mean, they might say like he's not my uncle. No one's gonna believe him.
And I think that was the first time where you saw something that you couldn't explain any other way than there's these evil space pods that are replacing us. So then the only other scene I had written down was when Becky transforms, you know, like she falls asleep and then wakes back up and has been replaced. And that's another one though where it didn't make sense to me, because it was just her. It wasn't like something happened with her body. You know, she just fell asleep and then...
That's a good point.
So like, what was the point of growing?
But it says anyway, it duplicates like everything. You get the cut, so maybe it included clothes, I guess.
I don't know, but she fell asleep while he was carrying her. And so that was the part that made me go back and ask that question. But anyway, but that whole moment of like, it's been this struggle they've been running. It's been like a lot of kind of action and chase scene for a while, and they're almost away. They seem to have, you know, avoided the search party, and then he's carrying her out and she falls asleep, and then she wakes back up and she's been transformed, and just that sinking feeling of they were so close and now it's happened. And then she starts yelling, he's in here, for everybody to come find him. It was just such like a defeating moment that I thought that was really well pulled off and did what it was trying to do in a good way.
It was especially defeating too, because of the whole scene that I was kind of talking about earlier in his office. You know, he's talking about, you know, he brings up love and can you love, and it's like, oh, there's no need for love when you're like us. And he says the line, I want to love and be loved. So then fast forward to when she goes, but also like I'm kind of thinking too, like, well, he could probably like get away a little bit faster. It's just him. You know, like there's no like no person like fall asleep on him. It was like, okay, well at least he's gonna, like, okay, I see why he makes it now, because you can't be dragging a sleepy person person who's sleepy all around. It's just not gonna happen.
True, very true. It probably saved him.
I've tried, it doesn't work.
So anyway, what did you think about the ending?
You know, I would say the ending kind of started when they're hiding out in the cave, right?
I was thinking more like,
or the tunnel,
from kind of the time after she changes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So right before that, with the tunnel, it's super sketchy. They're hiding under it. That's why like that was another scene I really liked where they're hiding under the boards. But anyway, so she switches, she turns into one of them, whatever it is, and like, do you have that moment of like, oh, is he just gonna go to sleep? Like, you have that beautiful music playing, like, is he just gonna go to sleep and let it? Oh, I guess you kind of know it's not gonna happen because of the narration, but you kind of wonder, like, could that happen? But then all of a sudden she like snaps and like switches, and she starts screaming. Once she starts screaming and he takes off running, it's like, it's just super intense, and he's trying to wave a vehicle down, which also, it's like, come on now. Like, someone, if he would have just been calm, like, look back, oh, they're just standing there, they're not chasing me, let me
yeah, he was already away from them,
right? But anyway, so he finally, he's trying to wave vehicles down, they thinking he's crazy, which is what the people of that city who had turned were saying would happen, like, no one will believe him,
right?
Whatever. And then he's back in that, I guess it was a police station, is that what it was at the beginning?
I wasn't sure if it was a police station or a hospital, but either way, he was like detained.
He's back there finishing his story, no one believed him, and then there was a wreck, and the people came in and they talked about a truck full of, that had a whole bunch of weird pods.
They basically confirmed his story.
And that was when the cop was like, oh shit, damn,
exactly,
this dude's telling the truth. No, I liked it though. I liked how it ended, like, with the truth coming out, and they were saying block all the streets. It's not gonna stop it though.
You don't think so?
Nope.
Well, there isn't like a definitive way to tell who's been replaced and who hasn't. Right. So, but I don't know. I didn't love the ending. I felt like there could have been like another twist where the people that he was talking to had already been replaced or something.
I just figured that was going to happen. Like, I just knew that was going to happen. And so when it didn't, I was like, oh. So you liked the twist that there wasn't the expected twist. Right. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I just, as far as like on a horror level, it was kind of a, oh, everything might be okay ending, and not a something horrible overcoming the world ending, and that's what I prefer.
Not everything would be doom and gloom, Daniel.
Well, I'd be happier if it was.
I know. Just go back to believing that smoking cigarettes is good for you.
Here, this will help.
Here, smoke a cigarette. You need it.
It'll help your morning sickness, pregnant woman. But, oh, man. The 50s. But yeah, so then I guess the other thing that we haven't talked about yet was just the whole theme of the movie, or like the underlying story. And one thing that I wrote down while I was watching it that I hadn't really picked up on as much in previous times was like, oh, wow, this is really anti-communist. Like, it's almost like a propaganda type message, because all of the conversations around like choice and free will and, falling in line and not experiencing, basically just conforming to social order, is kind of what the pod people were talking about, and how that's like better than having your individuality and experiencing the range of human emotions and so forth. And so then I did some reading about it after, and it turns out that a lot of people either loved or hated that the movie was anti-communist, and then a lot of other people either loved or hated the movie because they thought that it was anti-McCarthy. So they saw it as like a commentary about, like, within the US there are people that are limiting the freedom of what you can believe, and communism is like one thing you could choose to believe in, maybe, but kind of that forcing everyone to be in line is a negative thing. And then other people are like, oh no, communism is what does that, and that's the thing that it's talking against. But what I think they all come back to is just sort of that larger feeling, and what the movie gets into, of just sort of the limiting of human choice or the human experience, and how that's a bad thing. Like, there's no question at any point in this movie if you think it's a good idea for them to just join the pod people. You know, like it's very obvious that that's a negative thing, and that's something that would be bad. And so whatever the movie is trying to get at, I feel like it did a good job of portraying the thing that it doesn't like as negative. But I think it may be just the more universal thing about how we may try to perfect life into such a way that we don't have the highs and lows, and that everything's the same, and that, oh, well, we're never going to be super happy, but we're also never going to be super unhappy, so that's good, right? And just sort of the idea that the human experience is one worth living and experiencing, and that's something that people really resonate with. And that's it for today's episode. If you've listened this far, then thank you, and we hope you've enjoyed it. We're always looking for new ideas, so if you have any questions, comments, or movie suggestions, please send us an email at thehorrificpod@gmail.com, or feel free to comment on or message our Facebook page. Just search for The Horrific Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Anyway, I just think, like, man, how good would it be to live in a period of time where it's just like, screw it. You know what I mean? It's like we don't know any better. Like, smoking's fine.
Ignorance is bliss.
Yeah, like, we'll worry about the liver disease and lung cancer like when you're in your 80s.
When it's already too late.
Right.
Yeah.
But now it's like, good God, man, you can't do anything. Makes me hate life. Can't do anything fun anymore.
This took such a negative turn.
Fucking hate my life, dude. I do.
I just hear like muted weeping from the other end.
God, I'm so miserable, dude.